Welcome to the Pocket Sized PR podcast, the podcast where pocket-sized pieces of PR wisdom are distilled and applied to real-life business situations by communications professionals. I am your host, Charlotte Nichols from Harvey & Hugo, and today I'm joined by Marketing Manager at Ford Aerospace, Victoria Thompson. So Victoria, how do you define PR?
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me today. I would define PR as building effective relationships with specific audiences. So by audiences, you can be looking at the media, obviously. You've got internal customers, your suppliers, your customers. So that list can go on quite a long way. But the key for me is the relationship part of it.
Definitely about the relationships. And I'm pleased you mentioned that more extended list, because quite often people think it's literally, I just need to build my relationship with my target customers. And there's much more to it than that.
There is an awful lot more to it than that. To get that understanding, you need to work with your customers internally. So what are your departments doing? What is your senior team doing? If you're part of an international group, you need to look at the relationships there. But the media as well, the community is so important. Mm-hmm. It really depends on the business you're in. If you're a small business, that can be very, very different to being an international company, for example. So you really need to look at the audiences that are specific to you.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And how does PR fit into your marketing role?
Constantly, daily.
Good to hear it.
Yeah. PR is just an essential part of any communications mix. Sometimes I think people can forget about it and go, oh no, that's just something that people faff about with, for example. Oh. And I can see you twitch.
Yes, you can see the pain in me.
Yeah. It is absolutely vital to relaying messages and building understanding. Mm-hmm. So whether you're looking to develop a launch campaign for a new product, for example, or you are working with some community groups, as I have done on numerous occasions in the past, it's about just setting things up and how you're going to progress that relationship. Otherwise, you can find yourself backed into a little bit of a corner.
Okay, yeah, I agree with all of that. It's almost like setting that foundation, that relationship, and then you can build your marketing efforts off the back of the relationships that you've established through PR. Mm. Excellent. And are there any specific PR challenges in the manufacturing industry?
Yeah, I think my background was very much small businesses initially, and worked with various customers, some of which were manufacturing customers. Mm-hmm. But then as my career developed, I found that the PR side of things in manufacturing was a lot more technical. So looking to get more experts involved. Mm-hmm. Things can be misinterpreted very easily, as they can in all industries, but you really need to do your research. That's absolutely vital. You can also find that it can be very difficult to talk about certain subjects. You may have NDAs in place, for example. You may have an amazing client or customer list, but you can't talk about it. So you have to look at other ways to engage with your audiences, mm-hmm. And get those messages across without mentioning X, Y, or Z. And that can be a challenge, but it's also part of the fun as well.
Absolutely. It's so challenging. It's so painful from an agency point of view. And I'm sure for yourself, when there's just a magnificent story that they just can't share.
Yeah. And you do have to be patient. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to sometimes take a step back and say, well, what are the benefits? Why are we looking to do this? And I still get the same kind of buzz when you see a story or you come across something as I did 30 years ago. But you have to take that step back and say, right, which audience am I targeting? What will the benefit be? And how can we then take another look at it? Mm-hmm. Perhaps we can develop that relationship with that customer and develop it in a different way.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can automatically think, oh, news releases, that's my PR, that's my PR strategy. But there are so many other ways to develop your PR campaigns. So again, it's about bringing all of those things into the mix. And patience, I think, is a good one in the manufacturing industry.
Yes, that is interesting, and almost more discreet ways of letting them know your capabilities in terms of, would that involve perhaps sharing a case study that perhaps isn't for public consumption, but you can share it with the potential new customer?
Yeah, very much so. So it can be about the capabilities and the expertise that you have, and working with that customer. So it could be something that's on a much smaller scale rather than for public consumption.
Yes.
But then other ways, my colleagues in the Spiral Group are excellent at developing things like white papers. So
yeah, brilliant.
it's what are the products? What are we looking at? As well as those amazing stories that you have.
Absolutely. White papers is a fantastic example of that. I think they're underutilized as a whole, because they take a lot of effort.
They do take a lot of effort, but it really does go back to that point of doing your research. What is it you want to say? Who are you looking to engage with? Is it the same customer group? Is it a potential customer group? So working that out as part of your PR strategy and seeing where it fits into the mix.
Totally. And it has to add value, otherwise there's no point. You see a lot of the time people produce, for example, a white paper just to be seen to be doing it, but it has to tie in, like you're saying, to the strategy. And so I'm kind of asking this question with a slight smile because I know you have. Have you handled many crises in your time in marketing?
Oh, this really does make me smile. I think there are so many different areas that I could allude to. Unfortunately, I've been in the situation where we've been redundancies, and the business that I was working for went into administration a few years ago, and there was a horrendous situation, and it was so awful, and the media were absolutely fantastic. But again, it goes back to who are you talking to? You very mindful of my colleagues. I was obviously made redundant as well. And you have to get all of the information. So it's about getting that timeline right, but then also your relationships with people in the media. So going back to say, I'm so sorry, but unfortunately I can't make a comment at this time. And the amount of times I had to say, I'm so sorry, I can't say anything. I didn't have that information to share, but being transparent as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think, seeing how you were and handled that situation from my side, from suppliers as well, because they often get caught up in those situations. Yes. For all you didn't have the information, you were willing to still speak and transparently say, I don't have that information, rather than just going missing, which quite often a lot of people do, because it's not a pleasant situation. You still maintained that communication and almost I fostered that level of compassion for you as well, because you were going through a tough situation as well. And I think, like you said, that's important for the media to know. So it's almost the message in this is not to just shy away. Don't go silent. Almost hold your hands up and say, I'm so sorry, like you're saying, I don't know anything. I can't help. As soon as I can, I will.
Yeah, and just keeping those lines of communication open. I mean, that was a horrendous situation. But you just have to keep talking. And you have to be honest about it. I mean, that's so important.
Yes.
And the same with when other situations. I had one example which makes me smile, where the roof came in at an awards evening. And we had 500 guests coming to a celebration.
Oh my goodness.
So we had to very quickly, in the space of 3 hours, change the venue and set everything up. So you just now it makes me giggle. At the time, it wasn't quite so much fun. But you have to tell people when they come through the door and say, we've done this, this is why, and you get over it. But again, it's about just being honest and saying, this is the situation, this is what we've done, we hope you still have a wonderful evening.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people still talk about it now, so it does make me smile.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is this, if you just said, this is now the plan, if people didn't have that understanding behind it, they're less sympathetic towards the situation. Yes. Whereas everyone knows situations can go wrong, and they're more willing to kind of see your side. I take it not many customers complained about that.
No. People were absolutely fantastic. And you do just... You just have to deal with the cards that you're dealt with at that time and go, right, well, we can kind of cower in a corner. And I remember colleagues going, Vic, what do we do? What do we do? We're like, we keep going. We have to keep going. And I think when you're doing crisis planning, that wasn't one on my list, funny enough.
It will be now.
But you do it. I think if it makes you stronger. And then when you're working with people and you get new people coming into the team and they go, oh, that would never happen. You go, actually, there are a breadth of situations that you can cope with.
Yeah, absolutely. So constant kind of open, honest communications.
Very much so.
And you've worked with global companies as well, or been part of global companies, some with very different cultures to over here. What do you find their approach to PR is?
Very much of the same principles. So making sure that we have good campaign plans in place, understanding what our objectives are, so how they tally with the business objectives. What are we looking to do?
Okay.
But quite different in that I think the regional media and the local media is so important to us here in the UK. And yes, that's very much true the world over. But on the campaigns I've worked on, it tended to be much more focused on trade and technical press.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. And I love how you keep looping everything back to that objectives. What are you looking to achieve here? Who's the key audience? And it might sound obvious, but quite often that can be forgotten.
It can. And I think I am the world's worst for... I say I'm not nosy. I'm just doing my job, but I am. So you just kind of, you hear something or you get a nugget of a piece of information, and I do my little meerkat impression and go, what was that? What was that? What can we do? And that you get that spark. And then sometimes you have to just put it to one side and go, okay, that maybe doesn't fit, or it's not a priority at the moment. Sometimes you run with it, but it is about going, well, back to those objectives. Who do we want to talk to? Why are we doing this? But yeah, sometimes that little inner voice, you've really got to run with it as well.
Yeah, that's true. And as an agency, you can sometimes get frustrated by a really diligent marketing manager who's literally focused on the objective. And that's a great thing, because you do come up with all these other ideas. But, I think it is sensible to be reined in. And like you say, every so often, run with it.
Yeah, and working with a wider team can help with that.
Yes.
So working with agencies like yourselves and other bodies to say, well, have you considered this approach? And you get that fresh perspective. So sometimes it's great because you're so focused on doing your day job, you're looking at what your strategy is, you're looking at your business objectives, and then sometimes you do need to be taken away from that, and somebody else just to go, actually, have you thought? And you go, I hadn't, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So just getting that balance.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree. And what's been your favourite PR campaign that you've worked on?
I think this is such a tricky question.
It is.
I've worked on campaigns where we've been focused on innovation and very much with small businesses, and the multitude of stories that came through, and you can see that human interest and how people have developed. And coming from a small business background myself are the things that really make me smile. And I'm so proud of the work I've done on projects like that. But I have to say it's the new ones. So I haven't been with Ford Aerospace for very long. So it's finding out more about the culture and about the business and discovering the wealth of stories. So it's kind of, I think my favourite is always the latest.
Okay.
So it's just, well, what do we have? And then you develop that, and then you can look back and say, that was great.
I guess that's a benefit of being in almost the manufacturing sector, or the emergence of technology, things are rapidly developing. So there's always something new to be talking about.
Yeah, very much so. And then because you're working with different people as well, and you have just so much information, it is absolutely fantastic just to be able to say, well, okay, where are we going next? How are we? What's our plan for the future, and how we can use PR as part of the marketing mix to develop that.
Yeah, definitely. And then going back to your first thing you mentioned about the people, smaller businesses, I love the people stories, because essentially it's all about people. And we quite often get people saying, I'm going to do this story. It's essentially, say, for example, about a machine. Mm-hmm. We're just like, but there must be someone who developed this machine. Who's the person behind the story? Can we get a quote from them to build in that personal interest? Because for another human reading the story, they want to hear about how that other human was involved in the process and fit it all together.
And that's one of the great things, is that you can do things on different levels. Mm-hmm. So you may have a story which can be about the operator or the engineer, but then you've got that customer-focused piece, which is all about the investment, for example, in the machinery. Then you've got the piece about the development or an expansion. So, but that all starts with that one little small piece of information, and then how you develop that is how it fits in.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes like a jigsaw piece, isn't it? A jigsaw puzzle. And it's sometimes is more, I don't know, analytical rather than, just the beautiful written words. Press releases sometimes have to be very to the point, and figuring out which parts of it satisfy which stakeholders.
Yeah, very, very much so. And again, just it's really important to keep that in mind. And so don't just go down one route and say, right, looking at our output, for example, we need to put out X amount of press releases. Well, is there something else that we can be doing?
Yes.
Going back to your earlier point about the case studies, is this more appropriate? So sometimes it's better to take that step back.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And how do you monitor your PR efforts?
So that can be via outputs of what are we doing, but very much by engagement.
Okay.
So using things like analytics, just saying, well, how many pieces of work have been downloaded, what the different engagement levels from different audiences. So it really depends on the campaign. Things like customer service work really well. There are certain metrics that I don't like.
Okay.
So just things like AVE, which as an agency and make you shudder, it's just looking at the engagement levels and really going back to your audiences. So what difference has it made to them?
Yeah, it is tricky to measure. I could understand why AV was so popular kind of when it was before kind of the digital media took over, but the maths, it was an easy formula, but it was just, you were generating lots of coverage for each story. So some days it would be a full day of just working out the AVE. It's advertising value equivalent for listeners that don't know. And that was kind of the traditional method of calculating the effectiveness of PR. It was about kind of the cost it would be to place an advert. And there was a multiple for it being a PR piece, which meant that it was more credible and established more trust. And then even there was an extra to add on if it was in colour or if it was in black and white.
So when people talk about the good old days, that was not part of the good old days.
No.
But it's surprising how many times you can still come across things like that, which never fails to surprise me.
Yeah, we still get asked, less and less so.
Yeah,
I'm pleased to say. But even the rule, you had to measure the cost per column centimetre. So you had to, they were the good old,
no,
not so good old days. Okay, so we're going to end on your top PR tip, Victoria.
I would say stay curious.
Like it.
Stay curious, but remain focused on your strategy.
Brilliant. And it was lovely how you tied it all back to the objective, which is, like I say, often forgotten, but a really important point. Thanks so much, Vic.
Thank you.
Nobody can do business with you if they don't know about your business. But nobody will do business with you if your business's brand doesn't have trust and credibility. PR is the secret sauce in the marketing mix that can help achieve this and so much more. If you're interested in how PR can help your business, contact Harvey and Hugo, harveyandhugo.com, or email info@harveyandhugo.com.